Welcome to the Worth Knowing live stream on the Cliff's Edge channel on YouTube, the Worth Knowing Substack. That's my Substack. We're on Twitch, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter. I am getting a wicked echo here. I am not sure what is going on. This is the strangest technical chat that this is very strange. I am going to try something here. All right. Let's see if we get an echo here. No echo? Yahtzee! No, still an echo. Gosh darn it. All right, folks. You don't hear an echo. Is no one else is hearing an echo? All right. Well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to remove my earbuds here, and I'm going to hope that this fixes itself. All right. Well, here we go. Look, I'm going to go with my opening spiel, and let's see if this problem continues. So I was just welcoming everyone to the Worth Knowing live stream. We are on a whole bunch of platforms. Unfortunately, that may not include LinkedIn. I got a message that LinkedIn is having problems. Maybe that's why I'm echoing. But regardless, it seems like we're doing 7 jobs all at once here. It's like the Haymon sketch from Living Color. And if you got that reference, congratulations, you're at least middle-aged. Today, we want to talk about a paradox wrapped inside a riddle, inside an enigma. It's like a political turducken. We have the most obviously, blatantly, flagrantly corrupt politician in American history sitting in the Oval Office. And yet, as much as the public is disgusted with a system they think is rigged against them and government that they think is broken, never before has an American politician been so immune to charges of corruption. That's the paradox. Scandals that would have destroyed earlier generations of politicians barely make a ripple. In fact, it almost seems like they're having a backwards effect. It's a little bit like your immune system. You get a vaccine with a weak or neutralized version of a virus. It doesn't kill you. And then your immune system learns how to deal with it. And so the next time you get the virus, you don't even catch a cold. Isn't that the entire experience of Donald Trump? We've been exposed to orange fever so many times that someone can cough it right into our face. We don't even get a sniffle. Now, the acronym that's been sweeping the internet is TACO. Trump always chickens out. But there's another version of it. Trump always cashes in on every available neck that he can sink his fangs into. Now, I wrote about this and did a short video essay about it last week on Worth Knowing. And I wanted to highlight a recent case that made the corruption so crystal clear, it would be hard for anyone to miss, even a dyed-in-the-wool MAGA Trump fan. The case involved a man named Paul Walzak, who pleaded guilty to 2 counts of tax crimes. Basically, he took $10 million that he owed to nurses and doctors and other people who worked at his nursing home. It was a business that his family was running. Instead of paying the taxes on that, he took that money to buy a yacht and baubles from Cartier. And remember, he pled guilty to all of this. But the thing is, his mother was a longtime Trump supporter. And she'd been pleading with Trump to give him a pardon to no avail. Then she paid Trump $1 million at a fundraiser. Magically, 3 weeks later, Mr. Walzak got a full and unconditional pardon. Go figure. Now, I found this story middle of last week on the digital equivalent of page 14 of the New York Times. And eventually it was picked up over the weekend in a few other places like the Atlantic and critically by today's guest, who I'm going to bring on in a minute. But make no mistake, what this story tells us is that Donald Trump is either selling pardons, and there's a lot of additional evidence that that's exactly what's going on per today's guest, or he's doing something that looks so much like it that there's really no difference. That's to say nothing of the corrupt bargain he made with right-wing judicial activists back in 2016. If they got behind him and normalized him to the Republican base, he would give them the judges they wanted. That's worked out pretty well for him. Or the corrupt bargain he made with Elon Musk and another right-wing dark Enlightenment techno-fascist or two, that if they backed him and bankrolled him, he would then give them the keys to the government and let them run wild. He actually literally did that. He literally gave Elon Musk a golden key to the government as he was giving him his big send-off party this week. And they were celebrating, I suppose, that according to a study in Nature, Musk and Trump may have killed 25 million human beings over the next 15 years by destroying U.S. aid to the poorest suffering people on Earth. So that's something to celebrate. Or what about the corrupt bargain that he made decades ago with Russian oligarchs and mafia figures who enriched him and supported him and flattered him and ran interference for him, and in return got to launder money and ultimately do whatever they wanted to the rest of the world via Donald Trump? I feel like King Theoden before the Battle of Helm's Deep asking, how did it come to this? That's really the question for today. Not only how did it come to this, but just to extend that nerdy metaphor all the way, Lord of the Rings fans will remember that the Battle of Helm's Deep, where the how did it come to this question was asked, was also the turn of the tide in the battle against the forces of darkness. So that's my question. Is the growing obviousness of Trump's corruption, this stack of deals with many devils, is it now going to start to catch up with him? And if not, how can we make this the turn of the tide? And part of the answer that I'm going to suggest is it might be counterintuitive. Maybe the answer is not to attack Trump about it. Part of it might be to tie Trump to the one thing that we know voters want above anything else, change. And for Democrats to become a muscular activist alpha force for change. To get into all of this, finally, after a lot of filibustering, I'm really happy to bring in today's guest, who's truly one of the great experts on Trump's history of corruption. Greg Olear is the author of the outstanding Substack and podcast, Prevail, a prolific author of books like Dirty Rubles, An Introduction to Trump Russia, and Rough Beast, Who Donald Trump Really Is, What He'll Do If Reelected, and Why Democracy Must Prevail. That is an extra long subhead, which is something that I really appreciate. Greg Olear, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
So what I'm about to do here is I'm going to ask you a question and I'm going to put you on the spot, because what I'm experiencing personally for all of our viewers is, you know how anchors on news programs have like the producer voice in their ear? I am hearing a playback of everything I just said 10 seconds ago. It is super distracting. So I am going to ask you a question and then I am going to disappear. I'm going to try to re-add myself and see if it gets rid of that echo. So here's my question for you. You wrote about this. Part of the reason I've been wanting to drag you onto this live stream forever, but part of the reason that I wanted to is that you also wrote about the Walzak case. And my thing is, it's not the worst instance of corruption ever in the history of Trump, but it's so obvious, it's so simple, it's so clear that in a way it's the most obnoxious. That was the way it stood out to me. What made you feel compelled to write about it?
Well, first, again, thanks for having me on. And I think that, you know, the critical thing here with the pardons is just that this is just one in a long example of pardons. In my book, Rough Beast, the third chapter is all about his corrupt pardons. I felt that if the media and people focused on just the corrupt pardons and forgot about everything else, because at the beginning of the show, Matt was talking about why this has been allowed to continue and to go on and stuff like that. And the answer, I think, is because there's so much stuff to focus on. There's so many scandals. There's so much corruption that it's just hard for any one person to keep track of it all. Like, you know, if you watch The West Wing, you'll recall there was a 3-season arc about President Bartlett getting MS and covering it up, right? And when Trump was found like lying about his medical records and those goons broke in and stole the medical records from the doctor, that was literally gone in 2 hours from the news. Like, that's where we are right now. Like, something which is a big deal, completely gone from the news. So the pardons have been going on for quite some time, and they're just disgustingly corrupt. And there's a lot of different ways to look at it. First of all, he pardoned all of his co-conspirators in the Trump Russia stuff. All of the Mueller report guys, they all got pardons, walked away with pardons. He pardoned people that Jared knew. And even this new case with this Balzac guy, although it's pretty obvious that it's just completely corrupt, it's at least he went to trial and pled guilty and had the day in proverbial day in court. There's a guy named Ken Kurson who was the editor of the Observer, who Jared Kushner installed there after he bought it and ruined it, and he was indicted for like cyber stalking and harassment, and he got pardoned before the case even went to trial. So the victims of his alleged crimes could not, and it's very hard to indict somebody for cyber stalking. It's hard to even find people interested in pursuing that, but they were able to do it. They put it before the grand jury. They're ready to go to trial, and then Trump issues the pardon, and there's no trial, there's no justice, there's no day in court, and this guy just walks away because he's buddies with Jared Kushner, and he used to work for Giuliani. And speaking of Giuliani, and this is what you were alluding to about the other proof. Okay, so Noelle Dunphy, who, as you may recall, sued Giuliani. She used to work for him as a sort of off the books executive assistant, and lots of horrible stuff went on there, allegedly. But she made a lot of recordings of stuff that Giuliani said. And in her lawsuit, it alleges that Giuliani was basically out there brokering sales of pardons for $2 million, and he would keep $1 million and give $1 million to Trump. He talked about this more than once. She has recordings of it, apparently. And so, the through line here is that it costs $1 million for a pardon. And if you're Trump, like if you have a brain that small and that addled, wouldn't you be like, yeah, $1 million for a pardon? Like that even seems like something he would do, and a price he would set, right? So it's all there. And, to your point, it's corrupt. Like nobody wants this. Nobody, literally no one, if you sat them down and explained this, would want this to work this way. It's just, it makes a mockery of the entire justice system. And it's just unfair. It has nothing to do with politics. It has nothing to do with policy. It's just unfair. That's
one of the things that you pointed out in your piece about this was that Donald Trump once fell for a prank where a journalist wrote him a check for 13 cents and he cashed it, which goes to show that like chasing the merest pennies under the table is definitely in his wheelhouse. And I just want to point out, by the way, in the midst of this conversation that first of all, I've put up on the screen your handle. Yes, you do this awesome YouTube show called The 5-8. And that is up there right now. And I do want people, first of all, I want people to subscribe to my Substack, please, and thank you, Worth Knowing. And you can find it worthknowing.substack.com. And I very much want people to find you on Substack at Prevail. Just really, really fascinating and great stuff. And one of the things you wrote about is this comparison to the Mark Rich case, the hypocrisy of the lack of reaction from Republicans now. And, this goes right to, Peter Baker wrote this up in the New York Times as well, like just reaching back into our Clinton, deep brain. When Hillary Clinton was first lady, there was a whole furor over reports that she had once made $100,000 out of a $1,000 investment in cattle futures. And it had happened a dozen years before her husband became president. And it was a scandal and forced the White House to initiate a review. And now we've got a situation where Jeff Bezos has agreed to finance a promotional film about Melania Trump that will reportedly put $28 million into her pocket. Crickets. Absolute crickets. Why did you want to bring in the Mark Rich story and just remind people what the story is?
Yeah. So Mark Rich was this financier and tax cheat. Basically, he was born in Belgium, comes to the United States to flee from the Nazis during the war with his parents. And he winds up making a lot of money, but he was indicted with his associate, Pinky Green, I think was the associate's name, for like something like 70 some odd counts of like tax evasion and trading with the enemy and some other things. So, kind of a sleazy guy. And rather than go to trial, he immediately just flees the country. this is in 1983. He flees, and he's on the lam for almost 20 years. He's just out there in the ether, which if you have all this money is, I guess you can do. He was in Switzerland, which didn't have the extradition, whatever. But there was a lot of lobbying on the behalf of his ex-wife, Denise Rich, who was a big Democratic Party fundraiser. And I think on the last day of the presidency, like right when he was about to leave, Clinton pardoned Mark Rich. And that was a big scandal, and it ignited this firestorm in the House, which was, I think, then controlled by the Republicans. Dan Burton, who was the head of the I forget which commission it was, but had a committee look into the pardon and wrote this actually really good report about it on corrupt pardons. And that's what they found. They found that it was corrupt and Clinton shouldn't have done it. And the Republicans obviously had a field day with it. The Democrats didn't like it either. The quotes from the Democrats are almost as bad, if not worse, than the quotes from the Republicans. And I think if you ask Clinton now, would he do it again? He would say, no way, wasn't worth it, whatever. But it was clearly bad. It was clearly corrupt. And there was no real reason why this guy should deserve a pardon. And that's the thing. The Constitution is very vague about the pardon power. The president really can pardon anybody he wants for whatever reason he wants. I think it's actually not illegal per the Constitution to take. I mean, maybe taking money is illegal, but there's nothing that prohibits even quid pro quo of that kind. So, you're in this very fuzzy area, but traditionally people who get pardons deserve them. They've served time. They were falsely imprisoned. They express remorse. They've changed. They have people lobbying for them, whatever. There's lots and lots of examples of this. And Mark Rich was not an example. And none of these people that Trump has pardoned, none of them, for the most part, deserve the pardon because it's just so clearly corrupt. Why did he pardon Charles Kushner? I can't imagine why.
Oh, I can't imagine. Yes, I'm absolutely baffled. I do want to get into the direction that you're pointing to here, which is the obnoxiousness of this, which I think sort of got to how President Biden got into trouble with the student loan bill, which sort of led into a response from Republicans of, well, wait, why do these people get help? Why do these people get a bailout? Why do they deserve? Why is their need greater than mine? And I think there's an avenue for that for Democrats here, where everyone Trump is focusing on is a clear. I mean, look, I'm a judicial system purist. I don't believe in convicting people outside of courts of law. So I'm not going to get into the Diddy thing, which is hot in the chats right now. But I'm sure happy to get into this Walzak case where you have someone who pled guilty. I think that there's a pathway for Democrats there. But I'm going to put a pin in that because I have one of the world leading experts on Donald Trump's background with Russia. And I have to go there because you literally have written the book on this. And I just think it's important to bring in when you and I talk about the fact that this is the most corrupt person in American political history, one of the most corrupt people in world political history. I mean, this is like Saddam Hussein levels of corruption. I want to just get across that we're not whistling Dixie here. You have all of the receipts. So here's my question to you. We will get back to this whole like corruption theme and how Democrats can go after it. But before we get there, when you think about Donald Trump's deep corrupt connection with Russia, pick one thing that you wish more people knew about that history?
I don't know if I could isolate it to one thing, but it's what bothers me about it is the sort of refusal for people to take it seriously, despite literally decades of evidence pointing towards it, including recent evidence, including first-person evidence of former KGB operatives who claim it. I know someone in my own, one of my own rare sources, a businessman who went to London in the early 90s, late 80s. And the guys that were doing security, because he was working for a company that, had an office in Moscow, were these kind of like off-duty these KGB dudes, and they were joking about it then in London at the time that Trump was one of their guys. This wasn't prompted by anything. They just thought it was funny. So there's all of this evidence to support it. We know about the evidence. Craig Unger has written about it. My friend Stephanie Koff has talked about it a lot, about the confidential informant stuff and his connections to the mafia and all that stuff. And it would be one thing if he was acting in a way that didn't benefit Putin all the freaking time, but he's acting in a way that benefits Putin all the time. I mean, one of the first things that he did, again, we lose this in the morass of crap that he's done since he's taken over. He had the CIA email, like on like Gmail or whatever, the list and the roster of all the new CIA recruits for the last 2 years and send it wherever. Why would he order that done? Who does that help? There's no reason to order that done unless, he wants the foreign governments and the hostile foreign intelligence services to find out who our CIA operatives are. Why would you? There's no justification for that. There's no justification for how he behaved with Zelensky in the Oval Office. Putin is clearly in the wrong with this invasion. It's unimpeachable. It's not a matter of debate. And anybody debating it on the other side is either, carrying water for Putin or either they don't realize it, or they're doing it intentionally. And I don't know what at this point where his head is, if he's being told. I don't think he's being told what to do. I think this is where he is. I think he is loyal to that place, and almost temperamentally at this point. And one of the reasons why this business with the war is confounding him is because he wants to help Putin, and I think he doesn't know how. And the end game here is that Putin wants all of the sanctions lifted. They want to drill for oil in the Arctic Circle. They're going to get I think some over $1 trillion worth of crude is out there supposedly. And that's where this is all headed. So I don't know. When the mainstream media seems like, they talk about it in the same tone of voice where they talk about like the UFOs or something, it drives me crazy. It's like, what are you talking about? This is, we know this is true. And even if it weren't true, which it is true, but even if there weren't this whole history, why on earth is he doing Putin's bidding now? Why is every decision that he's making helping the Russians, or maybe in some cases the Chinese, like shutting down U.S. aid, in addition to literally killing people by denying them aid that we're using to, fund their food sources, because there's otherwise would starve to death. In addition to doing that, U.S. aid is for decades it's been there, and it's a way that the United States expresses its soft power. We don't have to invade a country to do this or that. We show them by example. This is how we do fair elections. This is how we manage health systems. This is how we, handle the law. All this kind of stuff, and he killed it. Like in 2 months, it was gone. We're never going to earn the trust back of these countries. A friend of mine worked on a U.S. aid grant in a foreign country, and she had to wind everything down, lickety split, get rid of, terminate all the employees that were local that were working there, and somehow wind everything down and figure it all out. And who does that benefit? We're not saving money because of that. That's a lie. That's just a lie. Even the business with Ukraine is saving money. I mean, the investment that would have taken, and this is a Biden thing too, to really arm them the way that we should have armed them, is so much cheaper than a war may well wind up being. It's just foolish to not do it. So, that's a long answer to your question.
Well, it's absolutely. I have several things. Built up. First of all, a programming note for people who have joined in late. I have the strangest technological thing going on. There is an echo going I'm hearing occurred 10 seconds ago. So it's meaning that I'm trying very hard to track what Greg is saying while I'm listening to the echo of what he was saying 10 seconds ago. And I'm trying to keep up with all of the wonderful comments that are coming in. So please bear with me if I'm more than usual. And also, that's why I'm taking out my earphone in between Greg's responses, because it's the only way that I can collect my thoughts. Number two, I wanted to point back to someone brilliantly brought up in the comments here. There are a lot of great comments coming in. Someone brought in the example of, in my mind, here it is, in my mind, the best show on television of the last 20 years, not The Wire, The Americans. And I want to bring it in because, there's a lot of commentary to the effect of, this is real. There's so much evidence about what Russia has been up to for so long. Here's that comment I'm putting up on the screen. And one of it was the underlying story that led to the show The Americans. First of all, if you haven't watched The Americans, this is your next binge view. I get no cut from this, just a strong opinion. Second of all, I have a personal connection to this because I was at the Kennedy School of Government while two of the infiltrated Russians who were being planted in the US were there at the Kennedy School cultivating contacts. Now, in case our friends at the FBI are listening, don't come after me, man. They never cultivated me. Why? I don't know. I'm feeling kind of like, why is no one hitting on me at the bar? Like, come on, Russians. Like, I'm not worth your time. Like, I don't seem like a great prospect. I did go to be a senior congressional staffer. Like, hit me up, bro. But anyway, I felt a certain amount of connection with that story. And it just underscores the fact that there is a worldwide effort. It's something I got into with Dan Perry last week. There has been a well-documented worldwide effort to undermine, attack, infiltrate democracies in the West, not just the US, but certainly very much including the US. And Donald Trump was the leading edge of the wedge on that. You have it so well documented in your books. We've talked about it on my podcast, Beyond Politics, before. And this is, as Shakespeare wrote, very real and very full of proof. There is no longer any doubt. All of that is a big setup for my next question that I'm going to. Before I get to my next question to you, I do have to just say on your USAID point that this, I think, is going to go down as, and you catalog it so well on Prevail in your most recent post, this is going to go down as truly one of the most shameful episodes, not just in American history, but in world history. We had an opportunity. What's the inverse of that study in Nature, where our shutting down of foreign aid costing us less than a penny of our tax dollars. Shutting that down is going to cost, according to their study in Nature, 25 million lives. 25 million human beings are going to die because of Donald Trump. Explain to me, someone, how this is not the most shameful episode in history, in the history of the United States, and one of the most shameful in world history. It's absolutely disgusting and reasonless and pointless. And maybe it's partially explained by the fact that it was spearheaded by Elon Musk, and he's a drug addict whose judgment is highly questionable. My article on it in Newsweek, and I'm looking at it right now. When was this from? February 7th. I called it MAGA Speared Its White Whale, Leaving the World's Poor to Die. And I make the comparison to Captain Ahab, who the quote is, "Towards thee I row, thou all-destroying but unconquering whale. To the last I grapple with thee. From hell's heart I stab at thee. For hate's sake I spit my last breath at thee." Republicans have been after this for no reason whatsoever for decades. They have been after destroying American aid. They know math. They know that this is not a major source of American taxpayer dollars. They're doing it out of pure, unadulterated spite and for pure craven political purposes to twist what we're doing. And, in terms of aiding the world. And then they have the gall to try to cast themselves as the party of evangelicals. Anyway, okay. I apologize for the rant. I'm going to put my earbuds back in so that I can hear what you actually respond to my next question. But where I was going with this is the reason I wanted you to lay out that history, that deep, very true, very full of proof history of Trump and Russia, is that it is so beyond doubt his deep corruption at this point. It begs the question, do people not care? Why is this not a thing? And what I'd like to do is I'd like to read you the hypothesis of Mark Jacob, our guest here 2 weeks ago, former editor for the Chicago Tribune, Chicago Sun-Times, wonderful writer. This is what he literally just posted this morning. Not talking about corruption per se, talking about other issues, but I think it's very much on point. I want to read it to you and tell me what you think. This is what he said. When the media and politicians attack Trump directly, they trigger the defensive reflex that Fox News has long trained in his supporters. The notion that the left and the media have Trump derangement syndrome, and everything they say is fake news. When these Trump supporters hear his name uttered by his critics, they instantly discount the rest of the message. For a decade, I've been waiting for Trump supporters to be turned off by his crude behavior and rampant dishonesty, but they haven't. He makes his base of mostly white, mostly male voters feel good about themselves by sending a message that they own this country. So attacks on Trump's persona simply don't work. But attacks on the consequences of his policies might. The consequences, more food poisoning because of a lack of restaurant inspections, more cases of measles because of vaccination cutbacks, more lung cancer deaths because of the cancellation of programs to get people to quit smoking. Partisan arguments can wait. Right now, it's imperative to get across to people that the government isn't working for them because it's too busy making the super rich super richer. Instead of framing things as Democrats versus Republicans, we need to see the choice as decency versus cruelty, as competence versus grift. They voted for change last year. They can vote for change again. All right, Greg, what do you make of this? How do we make this the turn of the tide and start to turn this on Trump? Is it by going after corruption overall?
Well, before I get to the question, a couple of comments.
Yes, I gave you a long screen, so I
didn't. I couldn't interject because you didn't have the earbuds in. But I just want to say, like, by all means, the U.S. aid starving all these people to death thing is horrifying and awful, but it is not as awful, I think, objectively as slavery or genociding the Native Americans. So we can't say
that is a fair point. That is a fair point.
I know what you mean.
There, and I don't. But no, you're right. You're right.
It's
you're
on
right.
the list certainly, but it's not. And it feels ridiculous having to even like talk like this and rank these things like it's some sort of
worst podcast gimmick in history.
I have to confess, I watched the pilot of The Americans like 7 years ago, and I couldn't do it because honestly I was so tired of reading about Russian spies that I'm like I can't do this on my free time. I need to watch something that isn't about that, So,
listen, man, your time has come.
Matthew
Reese, by the way, is a Welshman playing a Russian, playing an American. His American accent is better than mine. He deserves not a Tony, an Emmy, or an Oscar. He gets an EGOT, and he gets maybe a Nobel Prize. So anyway, that's my The Americans. You should watch it.
I hear you. And I know I should. But to your point, I mean, the main problem that we have right now is that the media isn't reporting things accurately, just in a general way. We now are at a phase of things where legacy media is owned by very few people. The people that own the companies tend to be right-wing. And what is talked about on the shows is controlled. And, there's always this hope with journalism that it's objective. And of course, when you're writing a story about something, you have to be objective, no matter how much you hate the other person or whatever. You have to present it objectively. And I try to do, even though I don't consider myself a journalist per se, I always try to see the other person's point of view and look at things objectively. But ultimately, and Jonathan Larson was on the 5-8.5 a couple of weeks ago and made this point, the choice of what to put on the front page, what to talk about and not to talk about, all of that stuff is subjective. So that's the first thing. Media companies make subjective choices not to cover this stuff. They cover it the way that they always covered it, and the way that they always covered it is inadequate to the moment. So there needs to be a new model for how we do things. I don't know what the model is going to be, but the parent companies are in no hurry to make this, come to fruition. So, that's a problem. And then in a larger sense, the problem is the entire war on reality. And I feel like I make this same silly, I say the same thing every time I'm on somebody's podcast, but like the first thing he did when he became president the first time is he sent Sean Spicer out to tell people that his crowd size was bigger than Obama's. And everyone sat in the room, and every single person in the room knew that Sean Spicer was lying, including Sean Spicer. But Trump made him do it. He did it. And that was the day that Kellyanne Conway later on coined the term alternative facts. So as we know from our fascism, studies, which we've now had to unfortunately spend time, reviewing, what these tyrannical governments want to do is destroy the very concept of reality. They want it to be that you're so confused and so gaslit that you can't tell truth from reality anymore. And eventually when that happens, you just go, you curl up into the fetal position and crawl under your desk. And the media is contributing to that right now because they're painting a reality that is different from the reality that we're living in. I mean, some of the Times headlines, for example, are just, I can't even think of an example off the top of my head, but sometimes he'll say something so terrifying. And then you look at the headline, you're like, what is this? In what planet? Like, they're trying so hard to make him not seem like a criminal, tyrant, rapist, racist, who's, blatantly, we're like 37 minutes into this podcast. We haven't even talked about the crypto scheme yet, which is it's just a flat out bribery scheme. It's just flat out, but an anonymous bribery scheme. So anybody could give him money. Russians, Saudis, Chinese, mafioso, who the hell knows who's giving him this money, and Melania and everybody else. So it's so corrupt. And I think people don't like corruption, but again, they'll do the very Kremlin-y thing and say, well, but Bill Clinton, well, Joe Biden pardoned Hunter. Well, Hunter was convicted on this very bizarre gun charge, which for some reason the NRA just didn't weigh in on. I don't know why. I can't figure it out. They would weigh on any other gun charge. They only charged him and went after him because he was who he was. If he was me or you or anybody watching this, there's no way he would have been charged for that as a crime. And I supported that because I think that the actual crime and the situation was unfair. And the point of the pardon system is to correct unfairness and patent unfairness. And just because it happens to be his son doesn't mean he shouldn't correct the unfairness. But they'll tell you, well, Biden voted the son, so therefore Trump can pardon the guy that gave him $1 million. And Hunter Biden sold some paintings, therefore Melania can get this money from Jeff Bezos and whatever else comes in under all these book deals, which are just basically vehicles for someone to give someone else a big pile of money, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't know.
Well, let me just weigh in quickly because we're getting a couple of comments and questions in here asking for our view. Is crypto a scam, or is it a thing? Is it real? I just want to point out that one of the fun things I used to do on my podcast is just bring in experts who know things and could speak in depth about them. I brought one of the former executives, one of the top executives under Bezos at Amazon, when they were doing their first review of crypto. And basically what he revealed was they had done, and he wrote a little piece about this, they had done an internal review of all the use cases of crypto, and they could not come up with one that wasn't essentially a scam, that wasn't essentially a Ponzi scheme. They are struggling to this day to figure out, what is this good for? Sometimes when my kids are kind of, if you have kids, they'll behave like maniacs sometimes, right? Like that's a thing that young people do. And I'll sometimes pause them in the middle of whatever bizarre activity they're doing. And I'll say, so why is this good? Like, why is what you're doing good? And that's my question about crypto. Why is this good? Okay, so that was total digression. I want to hit you with one more on this, and I'm trying to time this right, because last week I got myself in some trouble because Cliff Schechter had promised to come join on the show, and then a million things came up, mistakes were made, et cetera, et cetera. He didn't make it. Well, once again, he's teasing me, and he's saying that he wants to maybe pop in a few minutes. So I want to hit you with the other part of Mark Jacobs' thesis here, which is, you were speaking a little bit about the media treatment here. And part of it may be that if we want to turn this corruption issue onto Trump, if we want to start to get at him, we have to do what Mark Jacob is basically prescribing here, which is we have to make it about we're against corruption. And we have to be willing to point the finger back, even though it's unfair, at the Mark Rich stories of the world, the Bob Menendez stories of the world. We have to make it about the issue and what it means to people, how it hurts them, not so much about the Trump of it. And we have to sort of, take the backdoor approach to getting in Trump. I did a little video about this. I want to play a quick clip from it. This is what I put out on Friday with just some new polling numbers. Let me pop this up, and I want to get your reaction to it.
Part of it can also be explained by some new polling numbers from Navigator Research. They point out that it's definitely true that Republicans are seen as more corrupt than Democrats, and Donald Trump adds to that perception, but not as much as you'd think. If you ask about which party is more corrupt, voters say Republicans by a margin of 7 points, and that margin grows to 15 points when you mention Donald Trump's name. And that's a clue, because that's not that big a difference. In fact, Navigator shows that Americans are pretty evenly split on which party they trust more when it comes to corruption. And here's the real clincher. They tested two different messages. Message one says that the scale of corruption under Trump massively outweighs that of any past presidency, Democrat or Republican, and we need to do something about it. Message number two says that Washington has a major corruption problem in both parties, and we need to enact significant reforms and overhauls to the system to hold Trump, as well as other Republicans and Democrats, accountable for corruption. So here's the thing.
All right, let me just pause it there. So it's a two-part question. First of all, what do you think of the background music there? Because I am not a musician and I've gotten some feedback. And second of all, what do you make of this argument that it's counterintuitive, but what Democrats really need to do is go after corruption on both sides, even though it is by definition a both sidesism, and it's counterintuitive because it's so unfair.
I have to think about that, but I want to show you something before it floats out of my brain. Let me see if this works. I don't know if you can see this. It's probably not going to pull it back.
Is that a button? What is that?
No, it's a coin. It's a silver coin with a cross on it. What this is, Matt, this is a Dogecoin. This is actually a Dogecoin. It is a coin issued in Venice in the 16th century.
Like a real Dogecoin.
Yeah, 15th, whatever. So it's a real Dogecoin as opposed to the one that isn't made of silver, isn't struck, and is complete, garbage. To get to the point, I mean, the problem I think is there's just so much, like, when some other person has had a problem with a scandal, say, with Clinton, obviously the Lewinsky thing. Before that, it was the Whitewater Hillary thing that you alluded to, but it's always one thing. It's the monkey business boat thing or whatever. It's one thing, and the media can just keep talking about it over and over about this one thing. What's the one thing with Trump? What's the one thing? Am I allowed to swear?
Go nuts. I strongly support swearing.
He fucking took classified documents home with him and left them in the least safe place in the entire country, which is the bathroom at Mar-a-Lago. Like, I don't
yes,
know.
right. Words fail.
And people were like, oh yeah, well, whatever, I mean, even as bad as J6 was, it's difficult in a court of law to prosecute him for something he didn't physically do. You have to do the conspiracy. You have to do the Charles Manson style thing, right? But I asked a friend of mine who's a lawyer after the documents thing happened. He was like, this is open and shut. This is one guy at the FBI agent who found this stuff, on the stand at the trial. Did you find the stolen goods? Yes, we did. Okay, that's it. We're done. He did it. He's not allowed to take the thing, and he took the thing, and we found the thing he wasn't allowed to take in his house. So,
can I throw one at you?
It's not hard to understand that.
All right. Well, let me throw one at you, because we've got a comment here saying, the CFPB was invented precisely for crap like crypto. Agreed. And by the way, I'm thrilled to run a comment in consecutive weeks from "You Don't Like My Music," which I completely affirmed is probably true last week, because I don't like anyone's music. As you could tell from that clip, I'm not a music guy. I do my best, but I'm hard of music. Okay. But this is something that I wrote on Worth Knowing a couple of weeks ago, because yes, agreed, CFPB was invented precisely for crap like this. But the other piece of the crypto Trump corruption nexus is the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force. It is the arm of the Justice Department that is literally responsible for taking down transnational crime, taking down drug and human trafficking networks. Now, what do transnational drug and human trafficking networks rely on? Crypto. So my whole point here was, at the exact same moment, there were two stories that ran on the same day. One was the Justice Department doing away with the Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force, which was, by the way, a Reagan-era unit. This is a Ronald Reagan thing that they stood up. And the exact same day, the story in the New York Times was Trump's son's deals on 3 continents directly benefit the president. Yeah, no shit. And the quote there was, "A contest of sorts has played out across Europe, the United States, and the Middle East in recent days as President Trump's 2 older sons have pursued a blitz of family money-making ventures, capitalizing on their father's name and power, each seemingly trying to outdo the other. It's a rush to cash that involves billions of dollars with few precedents in American history. And guess what? Guess what all of this involves? Freaking crypto. One of the companies that Don Jr. is cozying up to is a Cayman Islands-based crypto company that was fined $45 million by the SEC in 2023 and agreed to leave the U.S. marketplace for violating federal securities law." So there you go, Greg. I'm not nearly the international expert that you are on like Russian mafioso figures and their ties to the Trump organization, but it's just an awfully stunning coincidence that at the same time the Trump boys are running around hoovering up as much crypto cash and like Russian oligarch cash as they possibly can. At the same time, Trump shuts down the law enforcement arm most responsible for going after it. Amazing.
It boggles the mind that this is the thing. He doesn't feel the need to hide stuff anymore. And that's the thing that I think we should be the most concerned about. Before, he was at least attempting to, keep it quiet. Now it's just all out in the open. And I think the crypto is popular because it's anonymous. And how we have here a US dollar, which is backed by the full faith and stuff of the United States government. Crypto is basically,
we used to have full faith in credit. We no longer have credit so much anymore after the Moody's downgrade.
Right. But like crypto is back to, it's essentially the central bank of crypto is the mob, as I see it. And they're not they don't care about you or me or whatever. They just care about their own stuff. So it's not really a worthwhile thing. I mean, I think the only reason it exists is as a substitute for cash to move around large piles of money anonymously, which means it's going to be used by mobsters and also spies, because it's called crypto, right? It's called crypto. And this business with the Trump brothers, the Uday and Kusei, whatever, down in the Caymans. I mean,
oh yeah.
One thing I learned looking into, because I didn't really understand what meme coin was before. When you create a meme coin, it's just like a thing. It's just like me being like, hey, here's a thing. This is a little piece of whatever that is worth nothing and has no monetary actual value. let's pretend that it does. And then people just pay because they think they're going to ride the wave. But the person who creates the meme coin gets money every time there's a transaction buying or selling it, which is, so Trump made $360 million just on transaction fees, because the volume of trading.
Exactly.
Was so high. And, so it's not so much about my thing is worth this, my thing is worth that. Although certainly, when he's going to, for example, advertise that all these billionaires have to pay money to go have dinner with him in this currency, obviously the value is going to go up. So people can buy it in, let the value go up a couple of dollars, and then sell it because, buy low, sell high is a time-honored strategy.
And as you pointed out, the entire thing was explained in that documentary Trading Places. Y'all are a couple of bookies is pretty much the Donald Trump entire, that's the Trump meme coin business model, right? It's like, it's like they explain, goes up, goes down. Either way, we make a commission, $1. And there you go. And by the way, I've successfully filibustered long enough that you ask and you shall receive. Cliff Schechter, you just operated into my discussion with Greg Olear.
Thank you for having me. And I just wanted to say quickly, you also missed out on a couple other words they said in Trading Places that I'm pretty sure Donald Trump also uses. So we probably don't want to say those words on here. That's really just for Donnie and his dad when they were going around deciding who could live in their new properties and who couldn't. And thank you for having me on, Matt. And
right before he gets strangled, and it was the Dukes. It was the Dukes. Yes.
Right.
There were a couple of choice words used in there.
There were some bad words in there. Yeah, in the bathroom, not good stuff. But
yes.
And
go back to that documentary if you missed it.
Yes, but hey, I get to be here with Matt and my one of my favorite writers in the entire world, Greg Olear. So
thanks, Cliff. Good to see you.
Listen. So Cliff, I'm going to put you on the spot. So Greg and I have been on a freeform jazz exploration on Donald Trump's corruption, and
freeform jazz. I like it.
Yes,
yeah, you really can scat to that a little bit. It's not
well. It's puppet show and then Spinal Tap. But
I was just going to make the same joke. Yep.
Well, you see, because we're of a certain vintage, my friend. Yeah. We're a certain.
You mean we're all old, and that is.
I made a reference at the top of the show to Haymon, the Headleys on In Living Color. So like I'm old school. So
I'm scared. Anything I can think of to say from In Living Color would get me in trouble. So
yes, right. Talk about words that we shouldn't repeat. So
it seems fire
Cliff,
Marshall Bob, if you want me to, or Bill.
Well, that's a good one. So Cliff,
okay.
give me your take on this, because this is hot in the comments here. We all agree. We're all, like, everyone in the community here who's chatting and commenting is in deep, profound agreement about crypto is a scam. Donald Trump is knee deep in all kinds of scams. He is weaponizing them through the power of the presidency and pardon power and everything else in a variety of Trump money-making organization, maneuvers. He's essentially monetized the entire presidency. He's so deeply corrupt. No one gives a shit, apparently. And so we're trying to figure out.
These are all statements that are 100% correct.
Right.
And I don't even think slightly controversial.
Right. And my suggestion is that the new definition of taco should be Trump always cashes out. And it is true. But since no one cares, how do Democrats weaponize this against him? Now, Mark Jacobs' suggestion was, you know what? You got to jujitsu this. You have to not go after Trump because that raises everyone's partisan blinders. They'll just shut it out. Fake news, Trump derangement system, yada, yada, yada. What you've got to do is you've got to go after how corruption hurts. This is essentially like taking from the coffers and taking from you and not giving you the relief and the money that you deserve. But I mean, Cliff, what do you think?
Well, yeah, I mean, look, that's exactly right. I mean, in political work I did in the past, it was always quite clear. And again, I hate it because Democrats are too poll tested and too much, and we need to just sit there and think, how would you think about this? We don't do that. How would I think about it if my Medicaid's being cut so I can't take my family somewhere to get health care when Elon Musk is getting a tax cut for his 14th yacht. How would I feel about that? Or because how would I feel if they're ripping away my Social Security because Jeff Bezos's future wife needs a couple new body parts that he needs to buy her? That would probably piss me off. And I think that the fact of the matter is that it isn't just about Trump's corruption. Sadly, I think people have just sort of accepted that. I mean, it is insane when I deal with Republicans I know who voted for him, and they try to, they try to kind of either BS their way out of it, or they go with their buzzwords that Republicans have had hearings on to give them to use over the years. They seem to all start with B. What about Biden? What about Benghazi? What about, and all that kind of bullshit. Another B word. But the way you do it is, yes, you show how it is harming America. You show how it is harming you, the individual. You jujitsu it by making it that you should go to Trump voters because they've been told all of this stuff already by Donald Trump, and say Donald Trump's discriminating against you because they've been told they're victims, and they really are now of him. And so I think you can use the messaging they've used. Hey, look at the guy you always heard about, George Soros, the unelected mysterious guy in back rooms who made decisions about your future, destroyed your farm, killed your 401k, got rid of your job. That guy existed. It's just his name was Elon Musk. He was an immigrant who didn't come here legally and just overstayed. I mean, I think we can jujitsu all sorts of things like this, but I do think, as Mark Jacobs pointed out, to kind of finish it up, look, Trump's numbers are going to be low as hell. Yeah, keep banging that drum, but in the end, the midterms and before that, at the end of this year, a number of Senate races, which could lead us to much closer, will be decided not just on Trump, but the Republican brand. Destroy it.
I think that's a phenomenal point.
Remember, just let me say this one thing. I'll just say quickly. Remember Nixon, right? Acid, abortion, and amnesty. And he was describing us. Cruelty, corruption, and incompetence. That is your simple three buzzwords that are a narrative for everything these fuckers do. And go from there.
So I want to wheel this over to Greg, and I'm doing this as a two-parter. First of all, I'm just popping up Greg's Substack because there were some comments like, "Hey, I got to be able to find this on Substack. Here's all the
Greg
info."
Pisses me off because he makes me want to be a better writer.
I know, what a dick. So part of the purpose is to get that up nice and big so that people can, multitask and they can enter and hit the subscribe on that for Greg. The other reason I'm popping this up on the screen is it covers up Greg's shirt, and he didn't get the memo about Gray Shirt Day. This is like Muscle Shirt Day, man. Like what the hell?
Yeah, but Greg
It's
has
Taco
a real job,
Tuesday,
Matt.
and it's Gray Muscle Shirt Day.
Greg
and
has
by the way,
legit real job, and you and I are.
Oh, one of the things that people constantly say as I sit in for you on these two. Oh, there it is. Yes. Thank you. As I sit in for you, Cliff, as I sit in for you, one of the comments that we constantly get is like, they see me and they're like, Cliff, what the hell? What happened to your hair? And why do you look so swole? And now,
what happened? How did you get so much more handsome with such great blonde curls? And
I bring the beefcake, baby. All right.
I'm working on them my whole life. I just, every once in a while, I mean, it's like what Trump does in the morning when he goes in. And the hair is like down to here, whatever, and then he, piss cotton candies it up and gets the orange stuff going. It's like,
by the way, one of my favorite commenters, who's just like bringing the heat all live stream long, is Chipmunk Milk, and I just had to pop this up on the screen. You've got fans, my brother. You've got fans.
You've got OnlyFans, really, is what.
Yeah, this is welcome to Greg Olier's OnlyFans. All right, we're gonna let you get into word edgewise. We've just been filibustering nonstop.
Oh, I was going to say that's not a real moneymaker in my OnlyFans. Yeah, what was the question? I forget.
The question. I lost it somewhere in the midst of looking in your eyes and your abs. The question was, Cliff was basically suggesting like, all right, look, let's boil this down. It's corruption. It's incompetence. It's crime, right? I think those were your 3 C's. Pick one. Pick one thing. If you could worm your way into Hakeem Jeffries' head, what would you say? Right, I've kind of been in this situation as a congressional staffer.
Quickly, you can read my Substack from yesterday. I had lots of not nice things to say about.
Wait.
Go ahead. Sorry, Greg.
if I'm worming my way into his head, does that mean I'm a brainworm? Because then I would be saying the vaccines are. We need to study this further and find out what measles is good for you or whatever. That's what I would be saying.
Try
If
it
I
out
would,
for 6 months, and
yeah,
just like I did a wife.
if I was that. No, I
My,
think,
my wife is a doctor, by the way, and she is losing her mind.
yeah.
I can't even
She's
imagine.
losing her mind. Anyway, sorry, Greg, go. I'm gonna zip.
People, there are people who are engaged, and the people who aren't engaged are not going to be engaged until something hurts them personally. That's just, it sucks, but that's the way that it is. And there's a level of badness that I think we have to get to before people wake up. And if enough people wake up, then we'll be okay. And it's regrettable to me that, we certainly, the people on the show here, the people watching the show here, I think did everything that we could do to try to not put the country in this position, but that's where we are now. And I hope that the bad thing is something that is, not violent and not long lasting and doesn't kill a lot of people. But I don't know, the RFK is a ticking time bomb. I mean,
Oh God,
if we, as bad as all these other people are in his cabinet and as dangerous as they are, it's like, they're all supervillains in the Marvel Comics universe. They're supervillains doing the fighting. RFK is Thanos showing up at the end with the Infinity Stones and snapping his finger. That's the level of destruction and death that man can cause just by being that incompetent / Kremlin-y at this particular moment. We already have measles outbreaks. That we cured measles. We cured it. And now we decide that it's bad. It's good.
Turns out polio was more fun, wasn't it, than we'd heard? So I mean,
yeah. Iron Lung, isn't that a Jethro Tull song? It's really
Aqualung, my friend.
I know.
Well, I guess we could sing that.
Iron Lung.
I think you're exactly. I mean, I think Greg's exactly right. But I think that thing is going to be the economy. I think in the end, Americans are so. I mean, I hope it's not what RFK does, because then we will all die. But I mean, if it ends up being like, Ebola coming over here, God help us all. But I do.
Ebola actually isn't that contagious. You have to vomit in somebody's eye to catch Ebola. So probably be okay.
I mean, I think Pete Hegseth could find a way to do that. But in any case,
come for the beefcake, stay for the medical knowledge.
I do worry because in the end, and hopefully it doesn't get violent. But I think when we've gotten so in place of dignity and other things like that, we got cheap shit from Walmart. And when it gets to a point where people can't buy that, can't afford that, the dollar dies to the point where it's, people can't go anywhere. And this sort of way of living we got used to being so easy is gone for a lot of folks because they can't just buy more crap. And then the real stuff, which is, your farm and your ranch or whatever. Guess what? They had undocumented workers there. They're gone now. It's bankrupt. Your 401k, it's screwed. It does seem like more people, I'll say, pick it back to you, are becoming activated, and they're not us, right? The last poll I saw, Trump was down among white voters without a college degree by 10 points. That was a month ago. It's only gotten worse. So I do think that could be the thing that makes a difference again, which is why I was talking about messaging to those folks, because he's destroying his own people right now is what he's doing.
Yeah, he is in it, but MAGA is a death cult. It's a death cult. And
right.
At hardcore 33%, Craig, I would agree. I'll just say quickly, I do think there's a 15, 18% they propagandize who, yes, have some MAGA leanings. Yes, they certainly don't like the woke left or whatever, but I don't think some of those are winnable. That is all.
So, that's actually a great lead in. And by the way, a programming note for people. I believe in several important principles in life. One of them is punctuality. I know it's sexy. I usually try and keep these to an hour, but because we have been graced, and I don't know that I can extend Greg that much longer, but because we've been graced with Cliff's presence, I'm allowing us to continue a little bit longer. And this is, so Greg, if you need to bug out at any point, feel free to, but I'm going to hit you with a question that goes right after your Substack post this morning.
Okay.
I'm
to leave, but you can't.
You can, right? You're free to leave it. You can check out anytime you like. You wrote this morning about the taxonomy of Trumpism. You were getting at the fact that there are multiple forces underway. Now, it's funny, you and I tend to kind of channel similar lines of thinking. I wrote a piece for Newsweek, about 6-7 weeks ago, in which I argued there isn't one MAGA endgame. There are three. I think there are three agendas going on within MAGA world. And what I want to do is I'd like to get your reaction to this and see how kind of your taxonomy of what's going on there differs a little bit from mine, or maybe they're ultimately kind of the same thing. My version of it was there are three schemes going on here. One is the very obvious block led by Donald Trump himself. They're easy to figure. They're motivated by power and payback. That's what they care about, power and payback. Everything is a bottomless quest for more money, more power, more retribution. There's a second faction, and it's led by OMB head and Project 2025 avatar Russell Vought, and that's made up of Heritage Foundation infused true believers who see the entire government as a cancer needing radical chemo. And they have literally, he's literally said that his goal is to put the people who work for our government, for putting us into trauma in order to drive them out and to try to shrink down the government to the size where you can drown it in a bathtub. But then there's a third faction, which is the extreme dark enlightenment group, kind of led by Elon Musk, as espoused by Curtis Yarvin. It's this whole idea that democracy is done. They truly believe this. This is what they've said. Democracy is done, so their goal is acceleration. They want to speed up the collapse. They're like Ra's al Ghul. Okay, they had a League of Shadows that thinks the system needs to burn. They want to strike the match. That is my whole taxonomy. What's yours?
I'm going to answer the question, and then I do have to go. So I'm going to thank you for having me, because it's always fun, and I wish I could stay longer. In order to answer your question, Matt, I'm going to have to look into my Palantir here and really take a look.
Oh no,
to bring it back Palantir. To the.
Yes.
Yeah. To the.
You're really. Oh, you're hitting me right in my Lord of Rings spot. That's amazing.
I first of all, the radical Catholic extremists led by Leonard Leo, way more powerful and influential and more covert than those other groups, but they own the Supreme Court. So that's a major faction. There's a reason why Trump was calling him a sleazebag this week and naming him by name, which now people are going to maybe read about him. So that guy's very, very powerful. If you want to know more about him, please go check out my Substack and type in Leonard Leo, and there'll be lots and lots of things there. I think that's one. I would argue that, and again, this is, we're not biologists here. So there's no, I think Musk is slightly different than the actual Dark Enlightenment people. In my deep diving into the Dark Enlightenment crew, Musk's name doesn't come up all that much. It's really Peter Thiel. It's JD Vance is a big guy there. That guy Blake Masters was there. And then Yarvin, Michael Anton, and Bronze Age perverts. There's all the ridiculous people. That's
great name for a rock band.
They read the Unabomber Manifesto and sort of vibe with it, which is an interesting thing to read if you want to understand what they're about. By the way,
so crazy how it's all gotten so shaken up, isn't it? Like,
yeah.
Go ahead.
It's so I would put those in the factions as well. And I think there are people, almost everybody there has some ulterior motive, individually or whatever. Also with back to Musk, I think Musk I don't think he's working for the United States. This is just my personal opinion. I think he was talking to Putin on the phone all the time. Like, that's not normal.
Well, how soon did the little incel bros get the passwords at the Treasury Department after Musk?
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, how soon did Russia start trying to access it with the passwords they had? Like 10 minutes later?
Cliff, thanks for saying that. That's the distinction. Musk is incel. Dark Enlightenment are incel types who can get laid. That's the difference.
Well said.
And on that note,
that's so perfect. That's so perfect. I don't want you to say another word. All I'm going to do is your playoff music is going to be your pod and your Substack. I'm putting it up, courtesy of Jim Williams, Greg Olear, Prevail. Folks, Couldn't recommend it more highly.
Absolutely.
Cliff, you and I are going to riff our way out for 5 more minutes, but
cool.
let's get Greg out of here. All right,
Thanks,
man.
Greg.
Thanks so
Nice to
much.
see you. Really
Oh my
appreciate it.
gosh. Incel guys who can get lit. That's absolutely freaking incredible. That's amazing. All right, Cliff. I'm not going to belabor this.
That because that was pretty perfect stuff from Greg at the end there. I think I mean, you know, it's tough. There's sort of offshoots, right? Like some of these groups are kind of partially of one, partially of another. I definitely think because there's the religious Christian nuts, and it is mostly these Opus Dei types, but there's some MAGA isn't Mike Johnson, Baptist, evangelical, types mixed in there too. They all hate the government because the government is forced a modern society on them, and they want to live like a snake handling 19th century existence where women are barefoot and the whole thing. So there's that, and they loved racial segregation. There's the dark enlightenment types, and again, there's some differences among them, but I still think overall, and they're the ones that's Peter Thiel. We're like stuff to be experimented on. We're Soylent Green. You know what I mean? We're all, if he can figure out how to live forever, which is his obsession, and they don't believe democracy works. They believe a higher order are these tech geniuses, which they are not, should be running things. We've all seen how that works when Elon Musk runs things, or JD Vance for that matter. And then I do think this group of and again, it overlaps somewhat, the Project 2025 Heritage Foundation types who are lunatics who are the sort of well, I'm not finding the right word, but they're sort of the grandchildren of, or whatever, of the anti-New Deal right that sort of receded.
Right.
For a while,
they're
but
true
never went
believers
away.
out of the Barry Goldwater school who,
Right. They never
who
fully
truly
went away.
believe. And I can give them, I don't want to say a pass on their evil, but they have at least an ideological consistency that is wrong and demonstrably wrong, stupidly wrong. Like we've seen, like Sam Brownback and his whole experiment in Kansas when he was governor.
Yep.
We're just
He was
going
Opus Dei too, which is again
Right.
how some of these overlap with each other.
Right. And, so totally, wipe out all taxes. And lo and behold, you have to ratchet that back because you can't run a real-time trickle-down Laffer curve experiment in an actual U.S. state.
It's crazy.
Right.
It's like schools actually require some funds when shit breaks.
Right. And so, but they have a theory. They have a theory. Whereas, I mean, these people, like the Curtis Yarvin types, are like the Big Lebowski. They're nihilists, Lebowski. They care for nothing. They truly do.
Can I give you a Greg Olear like summary?
Yes, please.
It won't be as cool because his was perfect, but here's what I'd say. These three groups, and there's some others, and there's some offshoots and whatever, and I'm probably missing, one, but Group A, which the crazy religious nuts Opus Dei are essentially destroy the government and let God figure it out, right? Group B, which is the dark enlightenment tech pro nuts, is destroy the government and let AI figure it out. And Group C, who are the Heritage Foundation types, or whatever, destroy the government and let free markets figure it out. And that's what they all have in common is a modern government is the antithesis of their radical, hundreds-year-old, ridiculous, completely immodern, stupid, atavistic view of the world of how things should function and can't function in a modern world. They're not making America great. They're taking America back to the 18th century and destroying it so that we're a developing nation again with all the issues and problems we've talked about. And I mean, and if there were an offshoot of fourth group, because Donald Trump's not smart enough to really believe in anything, it's just simple grifters who just, tell me how to load my pockets. If that's cutting government, I'll cut government. If that's, that's making a deal with Erdogan or Putin or whatever, I'll do that. Just tell me what I need to do. And they're, and that's kind of the hillbilly, the Fifth Avenue hillbilly Trump family.
Well, I'm so glad you brought us there because you missed my opening thing. I usually do an opening segment for a few minutes, which lets people spool onto the live stream. And I listed off the various corrupt bargains that Trump has entered into, in addition to the obvious kind of surface level, all like the payoffs, the pardons, all of that corruption is obvious enrich yourself corruption. But then there's the other corrupt bargains that he's entered into. We don't have time today to talk about Leonard Leo and the Federalist Society and that whole corrupt bargain. You give me legitimacy in front of the Republican base in 2016, I will give you all the judges you've always wanted.
Yep.
The whole corrupt bargain with Elon Musk and the right wing, Yarvin dark enlightenment types, you fund me, I'll give you literally the keys to the kingdom. Like he hands him this golden key on the way out. Literally, it's a corrupt bargain, right? I think what you just said brings this full circle. For Trump, it's a grift because everything's a grift. It's always a grift, right? Trump always cashes out.
Pockets and craving admiration from people that will never admire him. Those are
the taco. He's always, it's the entire mission. It's power, money, retribution. That's all he cares about. But then there's the other people, the remoras around the shark's mouth. He's just trying to eat and they're sucking. They're sucking off of it for their own agendas. And I think the question that
who's sucking off? What's going on here? Can we switch over to OnlyFans? I didn't know it.
Yeah, when Greg started disrobing, that was that portion of the show. But we've moved on now to the serious content. But I think that's really the question that I want to leave people with is how do we nail them on this? You are working on a lot of this. So what I want to close on is a little bit of a pitch to people. So you're publishing a piece of mine on Blue Amp this afternoon. It's my newest piece. I was
just editing it actually before I came on here, and I will say, Matt, it's I was giving Greg the props as he's more of like the novelist writer, like whatever. We're more political writers. Doesn't mean like you're that was an incredible. The piece you've written is really, really good. Maybe it's because I'm a sucker for and these comparisons don't always end well, but Rome, the fall of Rome and us and whatever, because sometimes it's so close, and I love Roman history and spent some time there and whatever, but you really kind of develop well beyond that to how we could solve some of the stuff, and so it's really good.
Well, thank you very much, and part of the reason I'm like kind of shamelessly self-promoting here is also I want to make sure that people who are grabbing this through the YouTube have gone over and at least gotten a free subscription over on Blue Amp on Substack. That's where they can find a lot of your stuff, including your Thursday Substack only live stream, which is one of the biggest things going on Substack right now. Who do you have coming up this Thursday?
Awesome. I'm really excited. We've got Shannon Watts, founder of Moms Demand Action, which in and of itself is enough. But it's been on the board of, I think, is it Run for Something, organization to encourage women to run for office. She just wrote a book. Might as well promote it here too, because Shannon's fantastic. Fired Up, how to turn your spark into a flame and come alive at any age. And she sort of tells the story of how, at middle age, she found herself being an activist on a pretty important issue that she had never intended to be. And this book is all about that. So yeah, I'll be co-hosting with the great David Schuster, as always, who is more talented than I am. The man has an Emmy for hosting shows. And we'll have Shannon on for the entire hour. And I can't wait. That should be fun. And I'll be here tomorrow to see all you great folks. Just so you don't forget that, I'll be doing the 2:00 one here tomorrow.
So if people want,
I'll say quickly, we have Malcolm Nance on tomorrow, who has a counter protest going against Trump's birthday, little birthday celebration to try to get himself erect with tanks and various things. And Malcolm is getting some of his military friends to do a counter anti-Trump protest, and I can't wait to find out what he has planned for that day. So that will be tomorrow.
All right. So if people, you can be right back here if you want tomorrow to catch Malcolm and to catch that show. If you want to see my newest piece in Newsweek, you can, of course, go to Newsweek. You can also, what I really want you to do is make sure you have subscribed to Cliff's Substack over at Blue Amp. And
subscribe to Matt, worth knowing, which is awesome.
Oh, I'm getting there, baby. I'm getting there, but I have to hit William Knight's comment first. I'm going to look into your question. I'm going to research this. I'm going to see if we can OnlyFans this. We'll start as the gray shirts. We'll go down to the bare chests, and then we'll go from there.
Hey, listen, Substack, they really let you do what you want. So, I think you could combine an OnlyFans account with it. their free speech thing. I think there already is OnlyFans and porn and God knows what. I just probably just got us demonetized, but
Right.
that's what I do.
Wow.
That's on there because we know there are a couple Nazis on there. I just have always made sure to remind people that that if you get to know the people there who run it, you know who they are, and you know that they're just trying to stick to a not censoring folks, which YouTube and generally a lot of right wingers say that and it's fake, but YouTube really does hurt some of us on the left by not letting us debunk crap because we have to repeat the words to debunk it. So I would tell you over at Substack, there's like a couple of these idiots and they live in their own, in their own little Nazi slum together and nobody ever bothers with them. And it's really that app has got mostly folks like us on it now, which has become great. It's become a thriving.
By the way, I got to put up a couple of these comments that are really just chef's kiss. Beautiful, for people who are into feet and also for people who are into Cliff. There it is. Ooh la la. And
listen,
I'm going to take us out on this.
It's all a battle against time at this point.
Yes,
time
the sands of time are shifting, mostly
time
south.
Wins, but I hit the gym a few times a week, and we'll keep doing it until I croak and fall over. Rich,
until the gym hits back. All right, and so I'm going to take us out on here. I hope people will check out Worth Knowing. You can get my pod there, and obviously you found your way here. So it's like if you're already here, you may have even come onto this through my Substack. But I hope people will find their way over there. Your subscribing helps me, helps this show. We're all trying to make the pie higher and try to amplify some of the things we're talking about that the regular media is not talking about so much, which is kind of a shame. All right. On that note,
why what Matt's doing is, I'll say, just to compliment him, is perfect. I hope folks understand because we, helping to amplify other creators on Substack, which Matt is doing, which is fantastic. But then also, at this point, Newsweek, it has the branding it used to have, but is a more conservative outlet. And Matt is getting his columns in there, which means there are some folks he's able to reach that are not suspecting, so that when you make intelligent arguments, a few of them may actually change their minds. And so what he's doing is what we need to do to keep pushing our folks while infiltrating some of their spots, is what I would say.
That is, I think, the name of the game. Well, thank you for that. And thank you to all of you who've been commenting. I've said it before. I'll say it again. I love doing these live streams. I appreciate Cliff letting me sit in the chair as I've been doing often these recent weeks, because this is a lot of fun. And the most I get out of it is from the comments and the interaction with all of you. By the way, speaking of your upcoming guest on Thursday, I have Amanda Littman coming on this show in 3 weeks, the founder of Run for Something. So make sure to set a calendar reminder to yourself to be back here every week on Tuesday. And while you're multitasking, final pitch, worthknowing.substack.com for me. Blueamp. It's calm, right?
It's actually blueamp.co because somebody already had that. But I think we're cool.
Blueamp.co.
We don't need an M. M's are for people who need to feel cool. We don't need that.
We don't need no M's. All right. On that note, thanks everyone. We will see you next week.
Take care, guys.